Welcome to our annual Global Social Justice Research Symposium. I'm Fatima Husseini. I'm the Director of Engaged Scholarship and Pedagogy at the Center for Social Justice Research, Teaching and Service, or CSJ, as we're known around campus. On behalf of my colleagues at the Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs, and the Center for Research and Fellowships, I'm delighted that you're here with us today in person and also on Zoom. It's really, really beautiful fall day. I know I'm really excited that fall is here. So our symposium today is going to feature Hoya researchers in two of CSJ's signature fellowship programs. One is the Education and Social Justice Project, which is a 13-year collaboration with the Berkeley Center, as well as the David F. Andretta Fellowship. On our schedule today are also presentations from two College of Arts and Sciences Roden B. Davis Fellows, a Provost Distinguished Undergraduate Research Fellow, a Caloroma Fellow, and 4 Lisa Raines Fellows. You're going to hear a little bit more about each one of those fellowships from the faculty and staff who mentor these Hoyas. Special thanks to the Berkeley Center crew for managing the Zoom today, especially Emma Jean Johnson and Optum for providing tech support for us today, and also to the staff at the Arupe Hall for setting up this room for us. So throughout the day, each panel is going to share their research, and we're going to reserve questions for the end. For the folks that are on Zoom, please put your questions in the chat and we'll make sure to address them to the presenter. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Ryan Craig, Assistant Research Professor and Director of Student Programs at the Berkeley Center, to share more regarding the Education and Social Justice Fellowship and kickstart the program. But before that, just a quick note about tech in the room. The room is equipped with wonderful technology, but it picks up everything that you're doing. So just kind of be mindful of that for the folks that are on Zoom that might be hearing everything that is going on as you're sitting in your chairs.
Good morning again, everyone. I have the great fortune to partner with the CSJ on the Education and Social Justice Fellowship Project. ESJ, as we call it, is now in its 13th year of preparing students to conduct field-based research on local global initiatives at the intersection of education and social justice. The fellowship is a full calendar year and includes robust mentorship, an introductory research methods course, 3 weeks of on-the-ground research, and digital scholarship training for fellows to produce their vertical case studies. All of our past projects are available on the Berkeley Center website. In 2023, ESJ awarded summer fellowships to 3 students who spent 3 weeks with institutions engaged in efforts to promote social justice through education in the Philippines and Belize. I would like to offer our deepest gratitude to their host sites for the hospitality and care that they provided to our students. It is the work of our community partners we seek to lift up today. Sir Dex and Sir Maeng at Xavier University, and literally the entire community at Xavier University, Father Andreas, Ms. Fonseca, Ms. Wade, Ms. Tillett, and Ms. Ensalada at St. Martin de Porres Parish School, and Tina and Stacia, Kia, and Father David at Project HEAL and St. Martin's, as well as the countless staff and volunteers at these incredible institutions who provided contacts, fielded questions, picked up fellows from the airport, took them on hikes and to the beach, and threw birthday parties for them, and always made them available for Zoom calls. I will introduce all of our fellows and then invite Pragyan up to start the panel. Yeah, you guys can come forward now. Pragyan Achara conducted field research at our Jesuit peer, Xavier University in the Philippines. Molly May was based out of St. Martin de Porres Parish School in Belize City, alongside Renee Mutare, who studied St. Martin's embedded counseling program, Project HEAL. I'm going to turn this over to Pragyan. He's going to be presenting by Zoom, so give us a second to make that transition, and he should be joining us shortly.
Good evening from Doha, Qatar. My name is Pragyan Kumar Acharya, and I'm a fourth-year student at Georgetown University's branch campus in Qatar. For my Education and Social Justice Fellowship, I conducted 3 weeks of fieldwork in the Philippines in Cagayan de Oro City, also called CDO. At CDO, I studied Xavier University's night school program. I will start this presentation by introducing myself and my academic interests, after which I will provide a short introduction of the night school program and address one of my primary findings, the role volunteers played in creating and running the program. I will then tease out the ways individuals spoke about sustaining that spirit of volunteerism. On to my introduction. I was born and raised in Kathmandu Valley, the capital of Nepal. As you can see, it is a densely populated urban center of an otherwise developing country. After completing my high school in Nepal, I moved to Georgetown University's branch campus in Qatar to pursue a degree in foreign service. I am currently a student of international politics and education. I furthered this interest of mine at Georgetown's main campus in DC, and I have been drawn to the broad field of education in emergencies. My research at Philippines supplements and broadens this interest of mine. Contextually, as you will see through this satellite image, Cagayan de Oro City, or CDO, is a densely populated urban center like my hometown, Kathmandu. Through 25 semi-structured interviews and participant observation, I studied the night school program, an alternative learning system model that attempts to reintegrate out-of-school youth and adults in street situations and conflict with the law into the formal education pipeline. So what is NSP? The night school program is a program under the Arupe Education Center, AEC, at Xavier University. AEC comes under the university's Office of Social Development and the School of Education. AEC facilitates the community engagement of School of Education students, and the night school program is one of the programs under AEC's administration. The NSP was established in 2016 and has enrolled its 8th batch of learners for this year. The night school program adopts and innovates on the Philippine government's alternative learning system, or ALS. The ALS provides an opportunity for out-of-school individuals to complete basic education and receive relevant certifications after a year-long instruction. At NSP, volunteer teachers and undergraduate students from the School of Education who are currently completing their teacher education program work with learners from the CDO community and provide daily instruction. As the name suggests, it is one of the very few ALS centers that runs at night, a time favorable for the needs of the out-of-school youth and learners. In 2022, the NSP was recognized by the government as one-of-a-kind ALS center and provided with the National Literacy Award. A striking feature of Cagayan de Oro City is the volume of youth and adults in street situation. 2 minutes walk from Xavier University leads us to Divisoria, one of the main streets of the city and one densely occupied by street dwellers, a fact I was witness to in my time there. Before being formalized as the night school program under Xavier University, the program started as street tutorials on 2011. The founder of the program, Jet Torres, pictured, decided to celebrate one of their peers' birthday by providing a tutorial for street kids living in the Divisoria area. That one-day celebration turned into a 3-day-per-week initiative where the founder gathered students and staff from the university, pooled and advocated for funding, and engaged with street kids, providing them with practical lessons in a hope to transform their lives. These tutorials ran for 6 years and were completely based on a volunteer model, with people engaging on top of their everyday work and education. A belief in embedding oneself in and providing for the community and the welfare of others motivated and sustained this engagement. As founder Jet Torres put in an interview with me, for me, the value of love and service and love. It means that you are trying to share yourself to them, allowing yourself to be with them, trying to understand their situation, not only for. Once the program was formalized under Xavier University and the ALS model was adopted, these learners were also able to access government-issued basic education certification. I learned that the undergraduate students from the School of Education who serve as volunteer teachers make the heart of the night school program. On top of their course load and extracurricular involvement, these students stay up every night to provide assistance and instruction to learners. Naturally, what drives them to volunteer became a key question for me. As students in teacher education program, serving as volunteer teachers in this multi-grade classroom is obviously great professional exposure, but not all students from the school volunteer, and more importantly, not all continue to volunteer for the whole academic year. My conversations with the volunteer teachers were incredibly illuminating. They spoke of a deep sense of moral obligation that they felt towards the less advantaged in the community, and how that drove them to acknowledge their privilege and sacrifice their personal time and interests. In almost all of my interviews, people spoke about the sense of family experienced as a result of being part of the program and sharing the common space. Administrators all acknowledged and reflected the spirit of volunteerism and spoke about the role they played in nurturing it. CN Emberong, a fourth-year volunteer teacher, articulated what volunteerism means to her by saying, "I think for me, volunteerism is like one of our responsibilities as human. I know I sound idealistic, but I think I really believe in this, that if you are here on earth, you have to really give something to others, like a part of yourself to others, because through that, you get to really know how it feels like to become human and be of service to others." As the program is almost exclusively reliant on a volunteer model, it is important to tease out ways in which individuals spoke about sustaining the spirit of volunteerism. On an individual level, volunteer teachers described how they leaned into other volunteer teachers and sought their support when they felt stressed or unable to continue. Moreover, many ascribed great importance to their Jesuit formation and articulated how the aspiration for majis, or doing more, and discernment or contemplation drove them through tough times. They saw great alignment in core Jesuit values that they believed in, such as cura personalis and the program goals and values. Despite having studied at two Jesuit institutions, it was only when I interacted with volunteers and administrators at Xavier's that I understood what Jesuit values meant and could visualize how it was adopted in an educational setting. In almost stark contrast to what I experienced at Georgetown, I saw people embody Jesuit values as opposed to merely speak about it. These two statements best elucidate this. Natalie, former volunteer teacher and now project staff, said, "I believe people are interconnected. It is just the energy. The people having a hard time just gets to me, and I don't want to see people like that." Roel, former volunteer teacher and now professional teacher, said, "It's really difficult given that I'm a college student. I have so much teaching there myself, so many other things to do academically, but I always go back to what Father Petro J. Arupe said. When you feel like you're overwhelmed with so many things in your head, to fall in love, stay in love, and it will decide everything." On an institutional level, volunteer teachers and even administrators highlighted the importance of two steps that could be taken to sustain volunteerism at the program. The first was the integration of ALS into the School of Education curricula. Although the Philippines government has created the ALS, or the Alternative Learning System, most teacher education programs across the country do not prepare teachers to serve as ALS teachers. Volunteer teachers spoke about the importance of integration, and administrators also spoke about there being momentum to head in this direction. Second was the issue of compensation and crediting the volunteer experience. Most of the senior students said that they had to take a step back from volunteer work because they had to intern as a part of their course requirements. They said that maybe some method could be deployed to credit the work they do at NSP. Speaking reflectively and comparatively, volunteer or co-curricular experience at Georgetown is often incorporated as credit hours, like this fellowship has for me. The role of volunteership in the program is only one aspect of my research. There is so much more that I have not been able to address in this presentation, such as the degree of local coordination in running the program, its significance to the wider CDO community, its relationship to other ALS centers within the region, its history and its management as it stands today. These things will be addressed in great depth in the report that I will prepare by the end of the year. Until then, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the volunteer teachers, administrators, and all that I crossed paths with during my time in CDO. I had one of the most formative experiences with you, and I am grateful that you did and continue to treat me like family. Ampinka, or take care. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to the Global Social Justice Research Symposium. My name is Molly May, and I am so excited to share with you the research that I conducted in Belize City at St. Martin de Porres Primary School this past summer. Thank you all so much for coming. As I said, my name is Molly, and I'm from Long Island, New York. I'm a student in the college studying sociology with minors in statistics and education, inquiry, and justice. As you can tell by my course of study, I'm very interested in both research and exploring educational systems. And the ESJ Fellowship offered me the opportunity to conduct original qualitative research in the context of St. Martin de Porres. Even better yet, I was joined by Renee, and so we were able to learn more about the environment of St. Martin's together. So for some context, Belize, as you can see here, is a small country in Central America, bordering Mexico to the north and Guatemala to the west. Belize is actually a former British colony, and with English as the official language of both the government and the education system, Renee and I were not speaking Spanish on our trip. As you can see here, Belize City itself is geographically divided into the north and the south regions by a river. St. Martin's is located on the south side of the city, an area that experiences high levels of gang violence. As a result, the greater St. Martin's community faces high levels of poverty, violence, and PTSD, which was only heightened during the COVID years. St. Martin's itself was founded in 1966 and is home to around 700 students ages 3 to 15. Like many schools in Belize, St. Martin's is a public Catholic school, meaning that the Ministry of Education has some power over funding, curriculum, and resources, but it is still a religious school being run by the Jesuits currently. Consistent with the Jesuit model, foreign-born Jesuits rotate through the school in the role of local manager at St. Martin's every few years. Something that I noticed very early on at St. Martin's was the prevalence of the core values, those being loving kindness, courage, reverence, community, and integrity. Specifically, I found that loving kindness was the most prominent in the school culture. As one teacher quotes, "One of the main things I teach my children is love. Always look out for each other and ensure that we are respectful, loving." This mindset really set the tone at St. Martin's. I addressed two main questions in my research. What is the state of both the educational mission and the religious identity at St. Martin's? Because of the structure of the school, these two goals were extremely intertwined. I explored these questions through 18 semi-structured interviews with administration and teachers, 2 focus groups with students, and a number of classroom observations over the course of 3 weeks. With Renee there with me, I was able to have support both in my focus groups and in getting to know all of the staff members. I had 3 major findings from the data I collected, which I will highlight today. The first being the devotion of the St. Martin's teachers, the second being the supply of resources, and the third being the channels of communication, which I will specifically focus in on at the end. These 3 findings are intertwined with one another and tie back to both the educational and religious missions of the school, which can be summed up very nicely by the assistant local manager, who stated, "We have a very willing set of teachers, so I have hope for the teachers, because I think the majority of them are energized and committed to being here. And so I think they would embrace some training or some encouragement on the part of the management to kind of inculcate or incorporate some of these Jesuit values." My first main finding focuses on the devotion of the St. Martin's teachers. It was obvious that the teachers at St. Martin's felt a sense of belonging and commitment to their students and their work. They led with love, which affected their teaching styles and their methods of discipline. As one teacher stated, "I love teaching at St. Martin's because I can relate to the children here, and I try to make a difference in their lives. I have a passion for my career, and it's the reason I go above and beyond the call of duty to work at my students and to help them in every way possible." Despite the commitment of teachers, many expressed wanting more guidance and formation from the administration and more autonomy in decision-making. Additionally, many shared that the school's process of religious formation was not successful in developing their or their students' understanding of Jesuit values. With their commitment to St. Martin's, the teachers were ready and asking for more guidance to better carry out the mission of the school. My second main finding focuses on the supply of resources. What stood out to me was the strength of the programs that focused on holistic care, including the feeding program, literacy program, clubs, and the counseling program, which Renee's research will focus on later. These programs are consistent with the Jesuit ideal of caring for the whole person, and they also included a culture of resourcefulness, even when resources were scarce. As one teacher explains, we have a feeding program here too, so students don't have any distractions, any discouragement, anything to keep them back. We do have counseling, and we are one of the few schools that offers counseling. We're also caring for the mind. Resources, if you need anything, the school is ready to give you a bag if you don't have a bag. However, access to technology, including laptops and projectors, was very scarce, and the teachers also expressed needs for more classroom manipulatives. However, not all resource needs are materialistic. As I explained before, teachers expressed that workshops for teachers, for parents, and for religious formation would strengthen the educational and religious missions of the school. Teachers also offered some recommendations for strengthening the Jesuit ideals of the school, including more mass time, more relationships with Jesuit mentors, and the incorporation of Ignatian pedagogy into classroom lessons. Lastly, I focused on the channels of communication at St. Martin's. As you can see here, the channels of power at St. Martin's begins with the Ministry of Education. The international model of Jesuits operates such that the local managers, the Jesuits, are rotated out every few years. The school administrators are veteran community members, followed by the heads of the departments, the teachers, and of course, the students. The school also has a discernment planning team made up of the local manager, the administration, and the heads of departments. The process of discernment, consistent with Jesuit values, aims to assess the state of the school community through the religious process of discernment and reflection, while educating faculty members on key Jesuit figures and practices. Ultimately, it is a slow process of decision-making. Some St. Martin members expressed appreciation for this process, but there was also the sense that the team lacked collaboration and efficacy outside of team meetings. Because the school operates within this structure of rotating Jesuit administrators, it creates a sense of instability, as a new pastor has to get a lay of the land every few years. As a result, vertical communication between Jesuits, administrators, and teachers is weakened. Tensions in leadership result in a culture of distrust and a lack of teamwork. However, horizontal communication remains strong among the administrative team, among the teachers, and with teachers and their immediate supervisors. The frequent turnover of pastors inhibits stable connections within the community, leading to a culture of distrust and incohesion. Rather than expressing their true needs or concerns, faculty members often remain quiet as to not disrupt the air of positivity. One teacher explained, "I think that we're also trying to keep everything positive. We would rather focus on what is going okay for the fear that we will mention something that is not going well." The assistant local manager echoed these statements, quoting, "I'll just stay in my lane and I'll just do what I have to do because I don't want to cause any fuss. Cause the fuss. That's my thing. Cause the fuss because it's only like that things will change." Even the local manager, Father Andreas, was on the same page with these issues of school cohesion, acknowledging, "I think there's a challenge here for the school of trust and communication. There have been issues within the school community with previous administrators. And so that unfortunately has kind of creeped in and continues to be a part of the culture here. Building trust does take time." In addition to weakening school cohesion, the model of rotating Jesuits also means that the Jesuit values are not being conveyed to teachers and to students. One faculty member stated, "What does it mean to be a part of a Jesuit school? And what is being a Jesuit as well? It's still not all too clear. And I do believe it's not clear, not to the staff, and much less to the students. So the students, nobody has explained it to them." This sentiment was shared among a lot of the teachers and students and showcases how weakened channels of communication affect the religious understanding of the school community. Looking forward in my report, I will go back to my interviews to reference ways of strengthening teamwork and collaboration within the constraints posed by both the ministry and the Jesuit structure. I will also consider the needs that teachers expressed regarding the allocation of material resources in a community where resources are scarce. I want to thank everyone at St. Martin's, especially Father Andreas for hosting us, and everyone at the CSJ and the Berkeley Center for making this opportunity possible. Aside from my findings that I just shared, my biggest personal takeaway from this experience was the experience of qualitative research and the value of the data that it can result in. This was a very new experience for me, but I am so grateful for the opportunity, and I'm confident that this won't be my last research endeavor. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Renee Wongai Muchari, and for the next few minutes, I'm going to be talking about my research that I conducted over the summer as part of the Education and Social Justice Fellowship. The title of my presentation is Empowering Minds and Hearts, Project Heal and the Pursuit of Social Justice. But before I begin, there's a trigger warning. This presentation may include content related to sensitive topics such as violence, trauma, or mental health. Your discretion is advised, and please feel free to step out if you find any part of the presentation distressing. My research includes my personal background, information on my site and Project Heal, my research objectives, methodology, and findings, and domestic circumstances at home as part of my research findings and the next steps I will take in my research. So a little bit about myself. I am Renee Wongai Mutare, and I'm a senior at Georgetown University in Qatar. I was born and raised in Gweru in Zimbabwe. I'm an international economics major who's on the pre-health track, and I'm also a social justice advocate. The reason why I took part in this research was because of the intersection of social justice and mental health. As an aspiring physician, my journey through higher education has been and continues to be pivotal in bringing me to this point. This research project holds a special place in my heart as it explores the intersection of social justice, education, and mental health, all of which have played a significant role in shaping the person I am today. I conducted my research at St. Martin de Porres Primary School in Belize City, in Belize. Belize City is the former capital of Belize, and as mentioned by Molly, it's divided by a river that separates the south and north sides of the city. The school is located in the south side, which is the red zone, and is beset by poverty, violence, unemployment, and family instability. So the organization I was working with was Project Heal. And HEAL is an acronym which stands for Hope, Education, Altering Lives. Project HEAL was established in 2013 by Ms. Tina Kwela, who is a therapist by profession. Project HEAL provides outreach programs to the St. Martin de Porres School as part of its mission. The mission of Project HEAL is to cultivate hope and foster educational success among students, families, and staff of St. Martin de Porres. The main focus of my research was HEAL Counseling, which is among one of the 4 programs that are run by Project HEAL. And HEAL Counseling provides counseling services to students and families of St. Martin. A closer look at Project HEAL. Project HEAL has 40 students in counseling amongst a population of 700 students at the school. They also offer life skill sessions, which are classroom sessions conducted by the Project HEAL counselors on topics that they and the students deem important in terms of social and behavioral issues. Project HEAL was identified as a unique resource in the St. Martin area with positive reviews from members of the community. The importance of the work done by Project HEAL at St. Martin was evidently reflected in the interviews I conducted during my field research. One of the teachers had this to say: Project HEAL is good. I have been to more than one primary school where I've taught, and they don't have this opportunity. And they help a lot of students. They really do help because there's a lot of kids struggling, there are a lot of parents struggling, and there's a lot that these kids are seeing at a very young age. It's horrible sometimes, the stories you hear, and then we deal with all of that. Sometimes it's like you're raising them before you can actually teach them. I'd like to pause for a moment to acknowledge the emotional intensity of the quote I've just shared. These subjects can evoke a wide range of emotions, and it's essential to acknowledge that. Nevertheless, it's equally important for us to confront the challenges faced by these families openly, as doing so is a vital step towards fostering understanding, empathy, and ultimately facilitating positive change as part of Project HEAL's mission. This is a visual representation of some of the work that Project HEAL does through HEAL Counseling. The counseling is not only in the form of one-on-one conversations with the counselor, but they employ other methods like cognitive behavioral play therapy to build rapport and foster growth with the children. My research objectives. The purpose of my research was to broadly contextualize the experiences of the individuals who are directly a part of Project HEAL, to examine the underlying factors that lead students and their families to seek counseling within Project HEAL, and to investigate how the program meets its stated aims and missions based on the experiences of its stakeholders and partners. As part of my research, I conducted 19 one-on-one interviews with Project HEAL representatives and parents, teachers, and administration members of the St. Martin de Porres School. I also conducted focus group discussions with the assistance of my colleague Marty, with students who have been a part of Project HEAL initiatives, and classroom observations, which were conducted by St. Martin teachers and Project HEAL counselors in the form of life skills sessions. My three main research findings were miscommunication, which was the unfulfilled communication expectations among Project HEAL stakeholders. Different stakeholders of Project HEAL expressed their concerns about how other members lack effective communication skills. For example, the lack of responsiveness from parents when communicating with teachers and counselors is impeding the progress of children in counseling. My second research finding, which I'll focus mostly on this presentation, was domestic circumstances, the influence of familial bonds on children's engagement with counseling services. So this is how the living conditions of children at home has brought them into counseling. And lastly, holistic education, the role of counseling and social emotional learning in education as a reflection of St. Martin's Jesuit identity. This aligns perfectly with the initiatives fostered at St. Martin, where we can see the work of Project HEAL being rooted in Jesuit values. Project HEAL reflects the Jesuit identity of the school, embracing values such as cura personalis, which is care for the whole person, and loving compassion. When it comes to domestic circumstances, there were four main factors that I identified. The first one was lack of parental involvement. Parental involvement in counseling and school activities, and how this reflects in the behaviors of students. If parents aren't as involved in their children's education, this manifests in how the children behave at school. So there's less involvement in upper levels, which is usually correlated with low academic performance in comparison to their counterparts. The second one was learned behaviors. Behavioral issues portrayed at school often arise as a reflection of the behaviors children see at home. The absence of a stable family structure often contributes to why children at St. Martin end up in counseling. The unique challenges of St. Martin, which include domestic abuse, the unique challenges of single-parent households, and limited educational resources available to their parents, considering that some of the parents at St. Martin are illiterate, contribute to how children are behaving in the classroom. The third one was grief. So losing loved ones to COVID-19, gun violence, and migration in search for better opportunities often leads to depression, withdrawal, and behavioral issues that call for counseling. Lastly, family relations and gangs. Many members of the community are related to each other. Consequently, it's more likely for children to be drawn into gang activities due to family connections, leading to issues like bullying, disruptive behavior, and a lack of enthusiasm for academics within the school environment. This can be portrayed in the quote coming from one of the Project HEAL counselors, who said, "Working with children is only again a part of the equation because the issues really stem from the home, whether it's lack of boundaries or structure in the home, respect for elders, respect for children. What is the appropriate conversation to be having with your child? What is inappropriate? Rules, or other parents contribute towards their child's low self-esteem." So I have seen that's the biggest challenge, that it's not a community, it's really an every man for themselves kind of thing. And the parents feel that counseling is a magic wand. And so that is the biggest thing in community. And the biggest thing in St. Martin, that the parents don't see their role and that they are responsible for the change. The next steps I will take in my research is to address the following questions. How does Project HEAL respond to the needs of the community? Does the community understand the scope of Project HEAL's work? And lastly, what are the differences in opinions and experiences of various stakeholders of the organization? I'd like to express many thanks to Ms. Tina Kwela, the director of Project HEAL, the two Project HEAL counselors, Ms. Tasha Shepherd and Kia Mortis, the parents and teachers of St. Martin, the Jesuits at St. Martin, and all interviewees who agreed for me to share their personal stories and tell their story.
So much. We now have time, at least 15 minutes for questions. So I would be happy to take questions from the room, or if we have some on Zoom. Do we have any, Imogene? No, okay.
Were you guys most surprised by during your research? Like, did you have some preconceived ideas about what you would find and that was challenged?
I can go first. I got a chance to speak to a lot of the families, and we were informed early on before going for our research project that there is a lot of gang violence and domestic abuse in the community. But the extent of which it happens within families is what surprised me the most. One of the family members that I interviewed talked about how her daughter was hit by a bucket by her father. And that's not something that you go in expecting to hear, despite the amount of domestic abuse that you've been told is going on.
I guess to kind of counter that a little bit, like despite everything that the community members were facing, what surprised me the most was the positivity in the school, especially about the young children. Like every day when we would get to the school, even if it was 100 degrees out, the children, like actually it was extremely hot, but all the children running around having so much fun, just like vocal, the way that they would come up to you and give you hugs, and just everyone was like greeting each other. I feel like that's not the same thing I would expect from like the culture in the States. Everyone's just like running up to hug you and greet you, but every day just being welcomed by that positivity just like really set the tone for the day, and especially knowing the context of the situation really made that more impactful.
Pragyan, do you have anything you want to add?
Sure. So for me, and I shared this a lot with people in my site, and this is a pleasant surprise, of course, is how similar I found Cagayan de Oro city to my hometown Kathmandu, just the space to Nepal generally and the problems that they face and we have back home. And most of what I study academically also revolves around education in Nepal, alternate education, education during emergencies in Nepal. So that was the most surprising aspect, and it tied quite neatly into what I'm studying and what I plan to study later on too. So I see a lot of room for expertise sharing and collaboration and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Here and then over here.
So I think Pragyan just kind of mentioned it in his perspective, but I'd be curious about yours as well. How did you kind of first find the school and decide on Belize? And then after that, how did you choose which area you wanted to focus on specifically?
I can answer the first part of that question. They don't get to choose where they're going. We tell them where they're going. So we are the ones who, the faculty collaborators on this are the ones who determine what sites we're going to be sending the students to. And that's really through connections we have in the Jesuit Worldwide Network. So we knew that we wanted to send students to Belize in the Philippines. And then I looked to see who we could collaborate with. And then in terms of developing their projects, they are also advised by the sites themselves on what they want to understand about their sites. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about that process.
I'd just like to express a lot of thanks to the Berkeley Center and the CSJ, because my very diverse field of study, they still managed to pick something that is aligned to what I believe in, something that I truly love. And even the counselors at the organization really managed to tailor it into something that I was enjoying doing despite all the challenges, but still fits into the work that I would like to get into the future. So it's basically just the work and how of the project that we're working.
I agree with what people shared. So I was invited by Father Andreas, who's the current Jesuit manager of St. Martin's, and so he kind of understood some of the challenges of the school and wanted someone to investigate how to strengthen the religious community. And then as I was doing that, I realized that I couldn't address the religious component without also looking at the broader school context, which is how I kind of had the two parts of my focus.
Pragyan, anything to add?
Not much other than, I guess, after the site is selected and after you go there, happy accidents, you make meaning, you try to make connections, you see how it's related. So I guess it's an iterative process. At least that was how it was for me.
I have actually a question about all the projects within. I have a question for everybody. So for Pragyan, I was wondering if you had any exposure to students who didn't volunteer, right? And so what is it about is there something, is it just sort of a morals values thing that make people volunteer versus people who don't? And if you don't, that's totally, I'm just curious if you were exposed to students who opted not to volunteer, what sort of difference is there? For Molly, I was curious if you, in terms of the organization of the school and its relationship to the state, or to believe the government, right? Because if people, it seems like there's sort of a, yeah, this Jesuit structure, I don't know, but where could sort of leverage for change come, right? Does the state provide money for the school? I guess who gets to decide, right? So I mean, so that's that. And then for Renee, I'm curious, given the intensity of the problems you see on the ground from a socioeconomic standpoint, it was surprising the small percentage of students who are involved in counseling. So is that a supply or demand issue? Is it that like a ton of people want the counseling stuff, but they can only give it to 40? And if so, how do they decide which 40? Or is it just like actually people need this, or I don't know, maybe we think someone might think they need it, but they are sort of hand raising for it. Because I guess I was just sort of surprised given that it's like, you know, a little over 5% of the students, but it sounds like the problems sort of penetrate much deeper across a wide percentage of students. So that was a long rambling thing, but I had questions for each project.
All really good questions. Pragyan, did you hear the question for you?
Yes, I did hear the question. If you want me to go first, I'm happy to go first too.
Yep, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. And thank you for your question. So yes, I did interact with students who didn't volunteer, and I also interacted with students who first signed up for volunteering and did not continue volunteer work, or volunteered for a bit and then sort of took a back seat or stopped volunteering and so on. So I did have interaction with this subset of students. I think to just preface this, volunteers at this program are just students from the School of Education and not other schools within the university. Now, from within the school, you have some that didn't choose to volunteer at all, and some that sort of discontinued, took a backseat. And obviously, it's not just a difference of morality. And I tried to hint this during my presentation too. I think it's a combination of many different things. First, most importantly, is I guess other commitments that students have during their university time as undergraduate students. The course load is very heavy. In their third or fourth year, they also have to go for a mandatory internship. So all of these things also pose as impediments for volunteer work. Second is that the night school program is a program that runs during the night time. So it's after you do everything. It's like a 7 to 10, 8 to 10 kind of thing where you work with like these learners. So then again, that also poses its own set of challenges, own set of gender challenges as well. So that also sort of becomes an impediment to volunteer work. And I guess the third is just the structure of volunteering at the night school program, which I wasn't able to touch on, just the management and sort of all the roles, different ways in which roles and responsibilities are delineated and what you're supposed to do. Sometimes this kind of structure does not work for everyone. And so this also contributes to people discontinuing or choosing not to volunteer. So I guess it's a mix of different things and not just one specific reason. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Thanks for that question too.
So Professor Fields makes a really good point about the structure and the oversight restrictions. And so the ministry does have a lot of the say in curriculum, materials, and a large portion of the funding services. And so the school is sometimes in a bind if, you know, they don't really have the opportunity to change what they're teaching or what their money is going towards, but there are still external funding sources. And so what I found was that it's really more of an issue of allocation of the resources that you do have, because maybe you can't start a new program, but when you are able to have an opportunity, you know, who has the autonomy in saying what it goes for? And I found that, you know, the needs that the teachers were expressing, like the direct needs that they need in their classroom, and then maybe the direction that the admin would want to take the school in were kind of conflicting. So I tried to focus on how to reallocate the existing resources.
Thank you. And then the reason why there's a very limited number of students in counseling is basically because of funding. They can't afford to have a lot more counselors at the moment. And one of the director expressed that one of their funders is about to pull out. So that essentially leaves like very little room for them to expand. And so having no resources to get more counselors means that the counselors are very limited, and even the teachers expressed how stretched they are of time, because on top of 40 students, 20 students each, they still go to the classroom 3 times a week to be able to teach these students what they're essentially learning in the one-on-one counseling sessions. And so they did express that if they were to get more funding, there is a lot of room for the organization to grow and get more counselors and essentially provide more services and even revive some of the programs that they had before COVID, which have died down. So I mentioned that there are 4 programs now, they had 5, and there's a very big disconnect there. And all of these issues that they're facing in terms of serving the community lead back to one thing, which is funding.
And how do they decide which kids get, given that it's such a tight resource? Is there a process that determines who becomes one of the 40 kids versus who doesn't, or?
So the students are referred to by parents and teachers, and sometimes even the students refer themselves to say, I need the help. And so depending on when each student signs up or refers themselves, or is referred by somebody else, and also in terms of how serious the situation is. So some students are only in counseling for a few months within the academic year because of maybe an event that happens within that term. And some students are there for the whole year, the whole academic year. And so they kind of graduate from that depending on the progress that they're seeing. So the teachers will respond back to say, okay, this child was not speaking in class before, but now they're a bit more communicative. And the parents will say something similar, but then the limited amount of progress or yes, the limited amount of progress rather comes from the lack of communication, like I mentioned before, within different stakeholders. So if one person is not responding back as fast as they should, then someone will stay in counseling longer than they should, because there's just not that communication to say that, okay, they might not need it now as much as they did before. And they do have a wait list as well, but they do try to clear that wait list within the academic year, but the stretch of resources kind of limits how many students.
There's also a question on Zoom. Sorry for interrupting.
No, thank you, Pregon. This is Dr. Wessler. What do you want to say the question on Zoom?
I think we should hear your question first and then circle back to Zoom.
Okay, thank you. But we will definitely circle back to the Zoom question. So Pregon, you're my go-to comparative education research, comrade. So I so appreciated you already bringing up Kathmandu, because that was going to be my question. So now I have a question for you and Molly. Both of you mentioned love. And that really stuck out to me. And I don't really have a question as more as I just want to hear, like, as I know you're both really involved in education initiatives here in DC and back in Qatar and in Kathmandu. And so I'm just eager what that meant to you or felt like to you to hear that.
Again.
You want me to go first? Sure. I think love came out in many different ways during my research. Like one of the quotes that I shared spoke about what love meant to the founder of the program, about being with people before being for them. Love also came when people were trying to explain why they volunteered. They were trying to indicate that it was something inexplicable like love. I think for me, love should be at the bedrock of any educational initiative. Like, to love is to give oneself to someone else, to commit to be with them, to see their perspective, to learn with them. And I think that is the model of education or even service that we should strive for. I think Freire has written a lot about it in Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So I resonate a lot with that. So yeah, that would be my answer.
Thank you, Pregon. Molly?
Yeah, so love and the value stated as love and kindness was extremely visible to me at St. Martin's, kind of at all levels. A lot of the teachers in their interviews, especially younger teachers, especially teachers with younger students, expressed coming to their children with love every day, because as Renee talked about, Especially the quote, you have to raise them before you can teach them. You know, sometimes if the children aren't receiving love at home, the teachers just know that they have to just be there with love. And I also mentioned I saw love factor into discipline in the classroom. Only a few maybe older teachers expressed harsher or more strict methods of discipline, but a lot of the teachers expressed their discipline styles leading with love. So I saw it among the teachers. I saw it among the students, as I mentioned, them just running up to you with hugs and love every single day. Like, it was very visible. And so that it seemed like love was just really needed in the school community. Yeah.
Pragyan, do you want to share the question on the Zoom?
Sure. So, but I won't answer it first. The question on Zoom is, what do you, and this is by James Redak, who I know is also a former Hoya. So the question is, what do you see as the biggest challenge and biggest opportunity for change in each of these communities?
Renee, you're first.
I think resources. I think resources would essentially create room for more growth and a bigger impact, because the program has grown tremendously from when they started until now, from just a few students, a very smaller population, to now everyone knows about Project Heal within the community, but Project Heal doesn't have the resources and the funds to be catering to everyone, despite everyone wanting a piece of what Project Heal can offer. So I think that's the biggest challenge for them.
Just as to not also say resources, I will say the structure that they're operating within, as I talked about before, and the limitations that it poses to what the school is able to do. But the biggest opportunity for growth, I would say, is that building of teamwork and collaboration, because a lot of teachers, you know, express the community feel that they felt among other teachers, among their students, that they came and they felt like St. Martin's was a home. But it was also clear that there were some limitations to that community feel with the upper levels, as you kind of are combined with the limitations of the structure. So I think the biggest opportunity for growth is expanding that sense of community to the entire St. Martin's community.
All right, Pragyan.
For me, and I will preface this by saying, I see a lot of similarities just in the makeup of Philippines and Nepal, and I saw a lot of parallel in the research that I was doing in the Philippines and the research that I was doing in Nepal. So to answer this question broadly, I think and there's this phrase in public health called burden of dual disease, and I think it applies very squarely when talking about education systems in developing world, where while like the West and other countries, they also suffer with, you know, making education more relevant, making sure it catches up to changes in technology so that it doesn't run obsolete. The burden of dual disease is they also have to deal with this resource crunch while trying to manage literacy, just basic education training and all of these different things. So I think this is sort of the biggest problem. And I think the alternative learning system that I described in my research also tries to amend to the latter half of the problem that I talked about. But I think the opportunity really is in just the human potential of people on the ground working with initiatives like this, just the aspiration, the engagement, the commitment, being embedded, caring. I think this is really where the opportunity lies. So that would be my answer.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank our fellows again.